Hey Rudy, are you up and running?
She's about to fall out of that.
You find the green bucket? There it is, right there on the table. I see them right there. No, really. It's hot in here. It'll be better. Hmm. Yes.
What are you doing?
I'm trying to see out of my good eye.
When are you going to go have your other one done?
On the 28th.
28th. Okay.
Yeah.
Then it's Pat's turn.
Yeah, I forget. I think she's going to be doing hers like in September or something like that. Kind of sandwiched between the high holy day stuff.
Yeah.
I guess we'll have to try to figure that out for her. But yeah, I'm going to try to get in a little bit of yard work this week if we can, because this last week was a bust, because couldn't get out there and do anything, couldn't lift anything, couldn't really go out and do any sweating or anything like that, because then you get your eyes all messed up.
Yeah.
So
Can't bend down either.
yeah, you're not supposed to bend down, and so. But I'm just about over that. The only thing I problem that I have now is inadvertently accident, something. I'll reach up and try to wipe my eye or something like that, and I was it was disastrous yesterday, day before, when I was trying to I was putting up onions. I had a whole bunch of onions from the garden, and some of them, I had to throw a bunch of them out because they were spoiling. So I took the good ones and started cutting them all up and freeze drying them. And that just got all, uh, I walk into a room where somebody's cutting up onions and start crying. So,
Yeah.
so anyway, I just reached up to it, and started to wipe my eye, and then I said, "Oh man, that was a mistake."
Oh, didn't you
So,
want to? I know I've done that too. Will you wear that patch at night?
yeah, I'm gonna wear it another night or two, I guess. I don't. I guess I should be doing. They told me uh, at the hospital, yeah, wear it a couple of nights, and then the doc says, "Yeah, I'll wear it for a week." And so,
Yeah, when
Yeah,
I
that's
had
what-
when I had my surgery, they didn't give me a patch. And in the middle and at night while I was asleep, I scratched my eye and the lens moved.
Oh
I had
God.
to go back in and they're like, "Well, you weren't supposed to scratch your eye." I said, "Well, I was asleep."
See, that's why
yeah,
it's good to wear that patch at night.
Well, but they
yeah,
didn't give me one. They gave me one after that.
No, I was talking to Steve about wearing
Oh.
that patch at night. I knew you didn't have one.
yeah. Well, I do. I put it on there. I don't, I don't know that when I rub my eye or anything like that, but I thought, well, I'll go ahead and wear it. And everybody's bugging me about, well, what about your eye drops and stuff? Well, hey, they didn't give me any eye drops to put in either. So uh, I guess I got the Volkswagen version of all this instead of the Cadillac version.
The Volkswagen version. Hey, as long as it works in the long run, that's what counts.
I guess, yeah, I'm not real sure. I hope the close-up vision gets a little bit better as time goes on, because I'm having a little bit of a hassle with doing this sort of stuff, and looking
Well,
through
you
the
got this too far away, right?
I'm sorry to tell you this, Rabbi. They put a lens in your eye. It doesn't move, so your reading is still going to be a problem. You may have to go to reading glasses.
Oh, I've got the readers right now. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Um,
But your reading
and
glasses are going to change a little bit. You may have to go to, you may still have to wear glasses sometimes.
yeah, yeah. Well,
Because, yeah,
if you noticed on Shabbat when I was reading from the Torah scroll, I quickly grabbed a pair of glasses and because it's hard enough for me to read that stuff anyway, and so
and
I
yeah,
was able to grab my
and and
glasses and go. Yeah,
and your eyesight might be changed in your right eye since you had surgery, and you may have to close your right eye to read out of your reading glasses because they're not going to be the same.
Well, yeah, that's what
yeah,
they told me that you. I mean, Steve, you got the one just for far away, right? You didn't get the
yeah,
one
yeah.
close up.
I got the basic version.
So that's what I did. I just got the far away. I didn't get the. I have to get my reading glasses, and yeah, he told me my eyesight, my glass. I need new glasses because the ones that I have now don't work. So
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well,
And the
that's what happened.
and the good news is the reading glasses can be over the counter reading glasses, but unfortunately, I think 6 months before he really recommends a strength of glasses for you.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what I say. It'll be probably after the first of the year. I'll go back in there and say, okay, give me a good set of computer glasses that I can put here, and it'll work for the computer and so forth. And even right now, it works really well for my two side monitors because they're about 4 feet away, but my laptop is only arm's length away, and so anyway. All right, let's enough of the organ recital there. So so I'm gonna go ahead and mute everybody. Okay, and I see some telephone numbers on there. I don't know who 5892 is. Or 6351. I don't know who that is.
That's Daedry. 6351 is Daedry.
Okay. 6351. All right. Good. All right. Well, welcome in, Daedric. Glad to have you with us. And then I see the Martin's on there, and I see the other is Mike Pavlovich, and so okay. Well, good deal. Let's go ahead and get going because it's time. And so, Joseph, you had something to say before we started, or no? Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and mute everybody, and then if we have something to say, just unmute yourself and go ahead and say away, or do the little thingy where it raises your hand, and I'll try to remember to see all of that. Okay. So here we go. So let's begin with the blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Bless you, Lord our God, King of the universe, sanctifies us with his commandments and commands us to engross ourselves in the words of Torah. Okay, so tonight we're going through chapter 19 of Jeremiah. And again, I want to welcome everybody in with us. I know Carmen had missed a little bit, and Karen, glad to see your headache has gone away. You're feeling better now, and so I was going to crack a joke about, well, your headache is better now because Leonard is off at doing his prison ministry, but he had already come back for that one. So there went my joke. And but glad to see you. Sumi, we haven't seen you for a while, so glad to have you with us there tonight. So let's go ahead and get going. And here's our little chart. We'll run through that. Everybody's seen the chart. I don't see anybody. I don't think there's anybody new here tonight. 5892. I don't know who that is, but hopefully I don't know if you're new or not. But All right, so here is the breakdown of the Jeremiah 19. It's pretty much divided into 6 little segments, and depending on how you wanted to do it. I mean, let's see. I think it was like depending on who you're looking at, there was maybe divided up into 4 segments and now 6 or whatever. I just divided up into 6 so that it was easier to break down. All right, and so I'm reading it for those of you that are not able to see it because you're on your phone. And the first module of chapter 19 is verses 1 and 2, and that's just kind of setting the stage there. There's going to be a prophetic sign where God tells Jeremiah to go buy a jar, and then verses 3 and 4, it's an indictment. This is just calling out Judah's apostasy. And verses 5 through 9 is basically the sentence. God is handing down a sentence to Judah saying, okay, here is what's coming. And then verses 10 and 11, it's when he actually goes out there and breaks the jar. And then verses 12 and 13, okay, they explain how that breaking of the jar, what is the meaning of all of that? How does that apply to Judah? And then finally, verses 14 and 15 is the ending of the chapter, and it's Jeremiah's return and a kind of a return from the Valley of Hinnom and up to Jerusalem, and a final closing word for that chapter. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into that. Verses 1 and 2, thus says Adonai, go, buy a potter's clay jar, take some elders of the people, some elders of the Kohanim, the priests, and then go to the valley of Ben Hinnom near the entrance of the potsherd gate. Proclaim there the words that I will tell you. All right, so the word that they use here to buy the potter's clay jar, it's the Hebrew word is bakbuk, and it is a specific kind of jar. And this is a picture of that kind of jar and how it was formed. So it's not one of those that you can just put on a wheel and turn it and make an open jar. This one is kind of formed, and you can kind of see where they've taken it and by hand and worked it out, and then put the little handle on it and stuff like that. Because in the Hebrew, the bakbuk, I guess we would say in English, when they would pour it out, it would sound, like look like that. Okay. And don't make fun of my sound effects, but that's what the jar would have looked like in all probability. Not a real common jar because it's harder to make, and it's probably more fragile because that handle is just kind of stuck on there. But anyway, there's that. And here is the Valley of Hinnom. And it looks really nice and pretty right now, with this picture here, as kind of a park, but it wasn't always that way, and we'll get into that later in the class. And here is the place that they call the Dung Gate or the Potsherd Gate. And again, when I was trying to find, okay, where exactly was this gate? And it's kind of hard to really get down to, and clarify it exactly where this gate was, because there's some disagreement with the archaeologists and the historians as to where this gate was, but that's the one that they're calling it today. Okay, that's if it had a name, that's the one. Okay, and here is a map of where that gate would have been. Now, you can see it down here, right at the very bottom of the ancient Jerusalem from, about 600 BCE. That was before the Babylonian invasion and destruction of the temple. And so you can see where it is, and it drops off in this valley of Hinnom. It drops really down. So there's from the bottom of the valley there, it's about 620. I think those are probably meters. I don't know. It's a contour. Anyway, it goes from there up to the top and up in here. These two mounts here, that's 780. And so if that's meters, then that's a difference of about 160 meters high. And that's pretty significant. So it may actually be, in feet. I really don't know, because the map didn't really give us as a definitive answer about that. But you can see the temple here, and the city of David would have been coming down along here, and the pool of Siloam. All right. And then right down from that, maybe 50 yards from that, was the potsherd gate. Now, I think in the modern version of it, this potsherd gate is way up here someplace. It's a lot higher, but maybe I just got my scales wrong. But anyway, this is where they describe where it was, and it just drops right off into that lower part of the valley. Okay, now, so I already said that the clay jar is a bakbuk, and it's known for the gurgling sound, that the glug 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 sound as you pour it. Now, one thing about this, the clay, the jar is fired clay. Okay, it's something that it's not like the other jars or the other clay vessels that would be made, where they put it on the wheel and they turn it and maintain it, turn it into something where then they just set it someplace so that it'll air dry, and then they just use that. Now, this is one that's fired, meaning it's put into a kiln so that then it has a glaze on the outside of it, and it makes it more impermeable to leakage. But what it also does, it makes it no longer pliable. It cannot be moved. And once it's fired, it's there. Same with the other ones, really. The regular pot, when it dries, once it dries, there's really nothing you can do with it other than just break it, because it is what it is. Think of clay pots that you plant your flowers in, and we've got clay pots all over here. Why? Because, well, they will breathe a little bit, and so you don't have the problem of mold and mildew in their soil around my wife's precious whatever they are out there, Christmas cactus and orchids and stuff, whatever she's got. So that's the clay pot, and then the other is a fired pot, and that would be more like a ceramic, like think of the material of a plate or a bowl that we use. It's got a slick inside and outside. So that's what we're looking at there. And So this is then a metaphor for the spiritual state of Judah. And they were before, they were the soft clay of Jeremiah 18, where the potter is making the thing, and well, if it didn't turn out exactly like he wanted, well, he just would take the clay and rework it, put it back on the wheel, and reshape it so he could do with it what he needed to do. But Judah now in its hardened rebellion, where God tells them to do something, and then they just double down, really double down in their rebellion and denial of what God wants them to do. So this is they're no longer that soft, pliable thing. They are hardened, and if you try to squeeze it or something, you're going to break it. So that's kind of a metaphor there for that. And so he was told to go out and buy this jar. So that is, he's making a purchase. So Jeremiah is doing a deliberate thing. And that sort of is like Judah's intentional choices, that Jeremiah went and made the choice of going to buy the jar, and Judah makes the choice of, we're going to keep on sinning and do it in spades. So that's as you see in the story, as it goes on, the jar will be broken, and we'll talk about that in a minute. All right, so Jeremiah was also supposed to invite the elders of all the people. That's the civil leaders that I don't know what their names would be, but those would be like the city council and people, advisors to the king or whatever. And then they were supposed to invite the elders of the priests. These are the old established. These are the spiritual leaders at the time. Of course, I don't know that they had they didn't have what we would call the Sanhedrin today, or back in the time of Yeshua. But anyway, they did have spiritual leaders, the priests that were high up, and they were the assistants to the high priest and that sort of thing. So he's supposed to get both the civil leaders and the spiritual leaders out there, and then they would go out and there's a reason that he would do that, is because this is kind of the whole thing here is kind of a covenant lawsuit, where Jeremiah is going out there and he's making accusations against the people, and then there's going to be kind of an indictment, as it were, and then there's going to come down a judgment, because really there is no defense. The people had no defense. But anyway, they bring him out to the valley of Ben Hinnom. Now, this was the garbage dump of Jerusalem. This is the city dump. It was a stinky place. And basically, that's where they would take and just go and get rid of their garbage. And they didn't have, regular environmental services or anything like that. They had garbage, and I'm sure that in some cases they didn't have any kind of toilet facilities that were anything akin to what we would use today. And so, of course, then they would have to take their jar, their pots that if they used for defecation and everything else, they'd have to take that down and dump it over the side there, and nasty stuff. And those little pots that they had, for the bedpan, or whatever they use it, for the going to the bathroom in. Those were called gazunders. And that's a real old word, and it's because it was a pot that goes under your bed. And yeah, you won't find that in any Hebrew dictionary. But anyway, the potsherd gate, there's some speculation as to what it was. Was that the dung gate, or was it not the dung gate? But again, it was a place where they could dump their garbage. Now, there's all sorts of places in Israel where, I mean, people have been living there for 4,000 years, 5,000 years, and making stuff out of clay, the clay pots. And so, I mean, there's actual, you go places and there are maybe not roads as such, but the paths that went from one village to the next village, or from one place to the next place, they're paved with broken clay jars or broken clay stuff, whatever it is that they made out of clay, plates and jars or cups or whatever, and they just throw them out there, and those become the paving rocks of their path. So they're just everywhere. You can we picked up all sorts of stuff until we realized that, my goodness, there's potsherds everywhere. And even we would walk along in certain places and you could find Roman glass, just shards of Roman glass for 2,000 years ago. You pick it up, it's just in the dirt. And so kind of interesting stuff there. All right, any comments or questions on that? Okay. All right, Chanel.
Yes, Rabbi, I still confused about the gate. The city of the David has three gates, or
Oh my goodness, no! It had anywhere. It just depended on when in history it would have been. As many as 8 gates, and there just are 10, 12 gates there, but there were like 8 main gates throughout history, and like here, if you look down, here's my my map. Okay, you'd have a gate there, the Benjamin Gate, and over here this would be the Eastern Gate, and they're just all sorts of. So there were about, depending on when in history you're talking about, 8 to 10, 12 gates throughout the greater Jerusalem. As they built more walls, they needed more gates. So that there were lots of gates.
Okay, so my question is next to the potsherd gate, there is another gate. So what's the other function like? How do you know that which one is the gate there throw the garbage stuff?
We don't. It's a lot of it is just speculation as to which gate it was, and and I said that the potsherd gate, was it the dung gate? A lot of people say it was. Other ones say, man, not so sure. But it was definitely down there toward the valley of Hinnom, Ben Hinnom, and so that pretty well lends itself to the idea that that's where they went to throw their garbage out.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, and so I don't know if we'll get to it here in just a second. Let me get somebody else in. All right, but this valley of Ben Hinnom, I think we can go ahead and this valley was associated with child sacrifice, the sacrificing children to the Molech, which was a statue that had a furnace in it, and they would throw their live children into the fire. And it was just horrible, horrible stuff. And so the valley then was it became kind of a theological symbol of judgment and defilement and the consequences of covenant violation. So anyway, that's why he told him to go to the valley of Hinnom, because it was such a notorious spot. And Jeremiah is going down there with the city dads, the city fathers there, the officials, the high muckety mucks, and they're going out there, and he's going to teach them a lesson. He's dragging them all out there. They don't like Jeremiah, but they also, they don't want to be left out as to what's he doing now. If he's going out there, we need to know what it is that he's doing. So anyway, let's go ahead and go to verses 3 and 4. Because we're already halfway through our time and I've only got 2 verses done. Okay, Jeremiah 19, 3 and 4. Say, hear the word of Adonai, kings of Judah and inhabitants of Jerusalem. Thus says Adonai Svaot, the God of Israel, I am about to bring such a catastrophe on this place that whoever hears about it, his ears will tingle, for they have forsaken me and have alienated this place by burning sacrifices in it to other gods, which neither they nor their forefathers nor the kings of Judah have known. They have also filled this place with the blood of innocents. So what they're talking about there is, again, God is going to bring just indescribable destruction to Jerusalem. And why is that? Well, because he said they've abandoned God. They just turned their back on God. They go through the motions of their liturgy and their worship, but it's just motions. There's no intent to honor God. It's just they're just going through it because they know, okay, that's what they're supposed to do. And they said they alienated Jerusalem. They turned it into something that it was supposed to be like the crown jewel of all Israel, and what they made of it with all of their idols and high places and all that kind of stuff, they just made it unrecognizable, really, to what God had really wanted it to be. And so they just profaned the land with their foreign gods. And then finally, they practiced child sacrifice. Even the King Manasseh, put at least one of his sons through the fire. They call in the Bible, it said, where they passed through the fire. Well, that is a very sanitized way of saying, yeah, they threw their baby into a fully burning furnace, threw them in there live. And just the horror of that, to try to describe it, is just overwhelming in many cases. That's why they would have people chanting and beating drums and all that kind of stuff, partly to drown out the cries and the screams of the mothers that had their babies taken away from them and thrown into this fire. Why did they do that? Well, it was thought that by doing this, they're appeasing whatever gods there were out there, so they would have good crops and peace from their enemies and fertility in their cattle and in their own families. Strange way of getting fertility by killing your firstborn, but that's what they did. That's what they did. Here is and yeah, okay. So in verses 5 and 6, they have built high places for Baal in order to burn their children in the fire as burnt offerings to Baal, something I never commanded nor mentioned, nor did it ever come into my mind. Therefore, behold, the days are coming. It is a declaration of Adonai, when this place will no longer be called Topheth or the valley of Ben Hinnom, but the valley of slaughter. All right, so if you've never seen something like that, this is gross. It's very disturbing. I probably should have had a warning on this, but that is one of the that's a depiction of throwing a baby into this fire. You know, you just can't imagine. I'm not going to show it any longer because it's upsetting to me personally. But the child sacrifice. Judah had committed basically the ultimate abomination before God of child sacrifice. You know, the human sacrifice. You know, I kind of like what was it, the Aztecs? They were famous for that sort of stuff, and other cultures. You know, they would have human sacrifices, and so but the idea of taking a baby, an innocent child, and sacrificing them in this horrible way, they didn't even kill them first or anything like that. They just threw them right into the fire. And the Bible says there that God never commanded it. Obviously, he never commanded that sort of thing. In fact, he was very much against it. And he never mentioned it in anything. And then he says, I've never even thought about that sort of thing, that these people could come up with that, the evil that they came up with, that God said, I never even in my own divine mind imagined something so horrible as that. And so then, you know, that's an answer for when people say, well, how could a God of love there go in and tell Joshua to go through and just wipe out the inhabitants of the land and just kill every one of them, man, woman, and child? Well, it's because they were so engrossed in the evil of their practices that that God wanted to completely wipe it out, kind of like he did with the flood and getting rid of all of the evil before in Noah's time. So the thing is that then he said, I'm going to change the name of the Valley of Ben Hinnom, because it was already associated with idol worship and that sort of thing, but then it came in, you know, it became this place where they had the statue of Baal and the child sacrifice. And so it was a symbolic place of just apostasy and judgment. And so they've gone gone back, and I'll tell you right now, I will go into that. It's not in my notes, but I happen to think about it. When Jeremiah is making his predictions, okay, those kind of things happened at the with the siege of Jerusalem by the Babylonians, and they had completely surrounded them and cut off their food supply. Now they couldn't cut off their water supply because the spring of Gnome, I think is the name of this. Somebody help me out there. Warren.
Yeah. Gehinnom means Valley of Hinnom, and
Yeah.
it's the same. It's Gehenna is basically the same as the equivalent of it, and it's in rabbinic literature. Later rabbinic literature is referred to as the place of where the wicked dead
Right.
are thrown.
No, but
You know,
what I'm thinking about though is the name of the spring that fed Hezekiah's tunnel and went down into the pool of Siloam.
oh,
I'm having a
Engedi?
senior moment here, huh?
Is that the
You're not talking
Gihon
about
Spring?
Engedi?
Gihon.
The what now?
The Gihon
Oh, the
Spring.
Gihon Spring. Oh,
Gihon.
you're
That's
talking
what I was
about
trying to think. Yeah.
the Gihon. Yeah,
Yeah.
Gihon.
Gihon
Yeah.
Springs. I knew it started with a G sound and it with a G
Yep.
someplace. I just was having a senior moment there. But they had water, but they had no food, and they had then they resorted to cannibalism of their friends, neighbors, even their own children, eating their own children so that they wouldn't starve to death. And at first, they what do they do with all these bodies? Because they couldn't go outside the walls, because then the Babylonians would kill them. So they just started taking the bodies and throwing them off the cliff there at the dung gate, and throwing them into the valley of Ben Hinnom. And so this happened then. Then later on, fast forward 500 years to the Roman period, and when the Romans then came in and they besieged Jerusalem and were going to just starve them out. Well, a lot of things went on, but starvation was the order of the day, and the people resorted to the same sort of thing of cannibalism of both friends and family, anybody, and as well as their own children, their own babies. They would eat them rather than starve to death. And so again, there was no place that they could bury the dead within Jerusalem, and they just kept stacking up, and finally the people of Jerusalem says, we got to do something. So again, they started throwing them over the cliff there at right into the valley of Hinnom, and that became also known as Gehenna. And so here's the thing for you. When Yeshua was talking about in Matthew 24 and 25 there, where he's talking about the thing that's going to be coming, he says, this generation will not pass until these things come to happen. Well, he wasn't talking about the book of Revelation. He was talking about the Roman invasion of Jerusalem and the destruction of the temple. And so, where he's talking about there, the fire, that area down there, they would, they lit fires all around that area just to keep the stench of the city dump. It was the city dump, and they always had fires going down there, and it was a really messy, just ugly, horrible, putrid place. And then now the Romans come in and surround them, and if the people tried to escape from Jerusalem, the Romans would capture them and then amuse themselves by trying to come up with novel ways of crucifying the people that they captured, hanging them in grotesque poses, and maybe mutilating them before they, while they were still hanging there, just horrible things. And so it was just a bad time. And they would throw these people over the cliff into the valley of Hinnom. And Titus, the Roman general that was there to to destroy the temple and just shut down the Jewish rebellion there. The story goes that he went out and he saw just the horrific condition of the valley of Hinnom, and the story goes that he looked up to heaven and he spoke directly to God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, because he said, look, don't blame this on me. I didn't do this. These are your people that did this to themselves. And again, where Yeshua said, where the fire never ceases and the worm never dies. Well, that's because of just the horrible, horrible conditions in the valley of Hinnom. So, not to say that that's not also an apt description of hell and the lake of fire and all that later on, but I believe he was talking about the conditions there at the valley of Hinnom, called the Valley of Slaughter. And so these corpses would just lay there, and that was the ultimate humiliation for the people of the ancient Middle East, was to not be buried. And I don't know if you've ever been. There are other places in world history where people, jumped off of cliffs, and if you go to Gamla in northern Israel, where the Romans had surrounded that city, it was a prosperous grape village, and olives. And they had grapes and olives. They made wine and olive oil. And so they surrounded, rather than being captured by the Romans and tortured or turned into slaves or whatever, the people went up on the very highest peak of Gamla, big cliff there, and like 10,000 Jews committed suicide rather than become Roman slaves or just captives and being tortured and killed by the Romans. So saw that, and then that was in also in Israel, but then a little bit closer to home, back in World War II at Saipan. The Japanese government there told the people that when the American Marines came to Saipan, that they would kill all of the adults and eat their children and this and that. So they for the most part, the Japanese population of Saipan ran off a cliff at the north end of the island, and fell something like 500 feet down to the rocks below. And you can still it's been 50 years ago for me, but I mean, we could go in that area and kind of dig around in the jungle a little bit, and you can find bones of these people that had committed suicide. So it was not that unusual, but it's still a very, very horrible, horrific thing. All right, so let's go to 7 to 9 here. So I will make void the counsel of Judah and Jerusalem in this place. I will have them fall by the sword before their enemies, by the hand of them that seek their life. I will give their carcasses as food for the birds of the sky and the beasts of the earth, and I will make this city a horror and a hissing. Everyone passing by will be stunned and hiss because of all her wounds. And I will make them eat the flesh of their sons and their daughters, and everyone will eat his companion's flesh during the siege and distress with their enemies, and those who seek their life will inflict on them. All right, so basically what they're saying there is government, the civil things Jerusalem is it's just gonna crack and fall. I mean, they're all just gonna go away, and their form of government, their civil government, everything they got is going to just fail and fall away. The enemy is going to come in and just destroy everything, and so here they've they're gonna, and I've already talked about this a little bit, how the inhabitants, they're gonna resort to cannibalism and even killing their own kids. And why was this? Okay, this is a direct consequence of their practices that they had been following for all of these years. And it's right against covenant. When the covenant said, when the covenant between God and Israel, where they said, yeah, we will do everything that you tell us, and then they promptly didn't, then there were consequences for that. And so now all of those horrors that are coming and being visited upon Judah and Jerusalem are direct consequence of their disobedience before God, and just doubling down in defiance of God's word. And so here he is. He's just destroyed. He's destroying every part of their society. All right. I'll stop here just a second. Any comments or questions that anybody might have on that? All right. So verses 10 and 11. Then you will shatter the jar in the presence of the people who accompany you, and say to them, thus says Adonai Svaot, even so I will shatter this people in this city, as one shatters a potter's jar, which can never be made whole again. So they will be burying in Topheth, for there will be no other place to bury. All right, so here you got a picture of the shattered jar. Well, guess what? You just can't make that. You can't put that back together again. It's just not something that is doable. And so when they shattered the jar, that was to show the elders, to demonstrate to them that Jerusalem's coming destruction was going to be total, going to be irreversible, and it was divinely decreed. He's got all of the witnesses of the civil government and the spiritual government out there, so that none of them could go away and say, well, we just didn't know what was happening. No, he went back and gathered these guys, put them there, and then he broke the vase in the jar in their presence, so that they would know that, okay, this is a great object lesson that the Lord is giving them. And that he said, I'm going to break the people, I'm going to break Jerusalem, and it cannot be put back together again, just like Humpty Dumpty. Nothing is going to save them. And we see that that's exactly what happened when they were carried off then into captivity in Babylon. So this is basically a prophetic sign where God says, okay, go out and break this jar, tell them this is what's going to happen, and it's coming. So you might as well just understand that this broken jar represents all of Judah and Jerusalem. And here it was something that was formed by a potter, so it's domestic. It's something that came from Jerusalem, and it was it had a use, it had an intended use, but again, it was fragile, it was breakable. And so this one is one that, it had been fired, it was hardened, and there was no reform possible at this point. They had crossed the line in the sand, as it were. So if you had to look at it, Jeremiah 18 equaled hope if they would repent. In Jeremiah 19, it says judgment is coming because they refuse to repent. So this is just irreversible. It cannot, there's nothing that would make it better and make it go away. And so here, when Jeremiah broke the presence broke the jar in the presence of the elders and the priests, this was kind of a legal requirement in ancient Israel for establishing testimony. They had the witnesses there. And so, this is not, it wasn't an act, a random act. This was a formal covenant lawsuit with the witnesses present. And it demonstrated that Judah had been found guilty. The sentence is being enacted, and the leaders cannot claim any ignorance. So this kind of elevates the symbolism of the jar being broken to judicial execution. It comes from symbolism to judicial execution of the covenant curses. So anyway, verse 12 and 13, thus I will do to this place. It is a declaration of Adonai, and to its inhabitants, making this city as Topheth. The houses of Jerusalem and the houses of the kings of Judah will be defiled as the place of Topheth. All the houses on whose roofs they burned incense to the whole heavenly host and poured out drink offerings to other gods. All right, so what we see here is that Jerusalem is going to be broken, totally destroyed, totally broken, just like this jar. It would be absolutely worthless. Nothing that you could do with that jar other than just to be trampled underfoot. Same with Jerusalem. When the Babylonians come through, there was basically almost no one left in Jerusalem. They carried everyone off, not like the Assyrians did in the north, where they still left people in around. Here in Jerusalem, they carried just about everybody that could make the journey. They carried them off. The sick, lame, and cripple, that sort of thing. They didn't bring them along because they couldn't. They didn't want to deal with them. The Babylonians didn't want to deal with them because that's just extra work, and so they just left them there. And basically, all levels of society, from the kings down to just the common man, is going to be affected. And because basically every person in Jerusalem was guilty of turning their back on God and doing sacrifices to the little g gods. So anyway, the city itself then would become the city dump, because you got to where there were so many dead people and so many dying that there was really nobody left to bury the dead or even to carry off the dead. If you think of the Black Plague in Europe back in the Middle Ages, where some whole cities, whole towns died away because there was no one left, and they just left the bodies right there because there was no one to carry them off. So this judgment was definitely a consequence of their disobedience to covenant and breaking the covenant with God. And so it's kind of reflection of what's happening to them is a direct reflection and consequences of what they did to their own children, in that they would sacrifice their own innocent children. And so it's such a heartbreaking thing, and we see in today's world where people will do these abortions, not because they're worshiping something like that, other than worshiping themselves. They just don't want to be bothered with the child and the responsibilities of a child, and so it's I would not want to be in their shoes come Judgment Day. And so what Lord is saying here, all of those things that y'all did back, for these last few hundred years, actually, it's coming back on top of your heads. And I'm gonna do to you what you've already done to these innocents. And it's going to be wide open. It's going to be out there for everybody to see, and it will be the entire city. All levels of society are going to be judged. So the last two verses here. Then Jeremiah came from Topheth, where Adonai had sent him to prophesy. And he stood in the court of Adonai's house and said to all the people, "Thus says Adonai Sabaoth, the God of Israel, I am about to bring on this city and on all her towns the whole disaster that I pronounced against it, because they stiffened their neck rather than hearing my words." All right, so Jeremiah moved. Then he went from the symbolic place, where he was down there in the valley of Hinnom. He went from there then up to, from the place of judgment, went up there to the temple, which was God's it was the center of Jewish religious life. Okay, and that was their national identity. For many people, it was their personal identity. The temple sitting up there on the hill was who they were. And so he went from the judgment up to the judge, as it were. And at that point that he went into the temple and started shouting out what God had wanted him to do, that judgment is coming. And so it just shows that this judgment was not just for certain people. This was for everybody, because the whole community had refused to repent. And so at this point, like I had already mentioned, there was no turning back. The die had been cast, and so God was not going to change his mind on this one. All right, he was definitely not changing his mind. And so down in the valley, Jeremiah had an audience of relatively few people, the elders of the priest and the elders of the people. Okay, so not a whole lot. But then when he went back up to the temple, then there would have been many, many, many witnesses as to what was happening, what was coming, and then the people again would have no excuse, because everybody's hearing it. And then that they're going to go and say, "Did you hear what Jeremiah said at the temple today?" And it would go on. So they had no excuse, and it was irrevocable. It was going to happen no matter what. And the reason for it, God said, was because they just hardened their own hearts against me, and what we would call today, they just doubled down and on their sin. And so therefore, that's why they were being judged and the city destroyed. All right, so that is the class for tonight. Are there any comments or questions that anyone might have? I mean, we could have really gone into a lot of stuff. Chanel, go ahead.
Sorry, I have too many questions, Rabbi.
No, you don't. You're good. You're good.
I just came out the scripture, the book of Matthew, talk about the place Jesus brought disciples to Caesarea Philippi, and that place had a gate. They call the gate to the
The
Hades.
underworld. Yeah, to Hades, right. Mhm.
And in front of the gate, there's a little G gods. It's I think it's a port god called Pan. So I don't know if there's any because I heard your teaching today. It came out to me if there's any relate the jar and the port god Pan, and also the Hinnom Valley. There's also a gate. Those places all sacrifice the children.
Okay, as far as I remember, I don't know that there was any child sacrifice at Caesarea Philippi. What they're talking about there, the gates of hell or the entrance to Hades, is a natural phenomenon of a fissure in the rock or a cleft in the structure of the geology that is kind of like say Yellowstone Park in the United States, where you have the steam coming up from geysers and stuff like that. Well, that's what they had there, and it was coming up from the earth, and it had kind of a sulfury smell, and it was and people associated that with okay, well, when people die, that's where they're going, right down into the gates of hell. And that was not only for the Jews, but that the ancient world around there looked at that as being that was one of the gateways to Hades, and it was relatively not associated with the Valley of Ben Hinnom at that point. Of course, Caesarea Philippi, that in the New Testament, where Peter and so forth and Yeshua were, is not. I mean, that's 500 years after the thing at Babylon, where Babylon came in and took over Jerusalem. So I don't think that the two are necessarily related, other than the idea of one's a surface picture of the horrific aspect of hell, and then the other is more of a mystical picture of what hell could be, because here you got all of these fumes and steam and everything kind of belching out of the earth at this one spot. So yeah, it's one was real, the other's a little bit more mystical.
Okay. I've never been to Israel. So is there a cliff next to next to the gate?
Oh, for the Dung Gate in today's world, in today's world, no. It would be very hard to look at that and say, yeah, there's so here's where they stood off. But there are places along the walls of Jerusalem, because they've been changed so many times since the time of Jeremiah. Nehemiah came through. After the exile, he came through and he built up different walls, and then later on, during the Crusade period, the Crusaders built up walls to defend Jerusalem against the Saracens and the Muslims. And so, yeah, it's a little bit different to pinpoint. We really don't know where that gate was. We can only kind of speculate. But in the time of Jeremiah, we know that was their city dump, and it would have had to have been one of those places where they could just kind of dump it off the side there and down, so it would kind of roll on down the hill and not be right there. It wouldn't stack up at the gate, as it were. There had to be a drop off so that they could just drop it off, kind of out of sight, out of mind.
Thank you so much, Rabbi.
Yep. Yeah, these people were definitely not environmentally friendly. Okay. All right. Any other comments that
Well, well, I'm just going to say that, I mean, of course, Yeshua talks about, he's talking about the brood of vipers, how you escape the condemnation of Gehenna, and Gehenna is a alternate name for Hinnom, means valley of Hinnom,
right,
or Tophet. And of course, it changed. He says it's no longer going to be called Gehinnom, but Geharagah, the valley of the slaughter, so it's talking about the same location basically, and so Yeshua mentions about how we escape the condemnation of Gehenna. Is how we escape the condemnation of Gehinnom. It's an allegorical picture of divine judgment, and even the rabbinic sources mention that as being the end of the place of the unrighteous dead, where they would be tossed. Basically, and it was treated as a garbage pit. It was never had much of a really good reputation. Actually, and it's on the south side of the old city.
Right at the very southern,
and which is actually where they have like the Al-Aqsa Mosque and things like that now. So that's interesting. I mean, it's that area is actually kind of relegated, taken over by the Muslims. But it's just an interesting. It's just an interesting connection between the concepts.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it is. Joseph.
Yes, Rabbi. You don't have to answer this question today, but I noticed that we used covenant a lot tonight. Lots of covenant, and maybe as we go forward, maybe you can give us a little overview of what does it mean that be a covenant. Maybe I'll look it up myself. The types of covenants.
I can answer it right now.
Okay.
Because the reason that I mentioned covenant so much is that without covenant, we have no foundation for saying that Israel sinned. God's covenant is God's Torah is his standard of holiness. And Paul talks about how that the law, the Torah, was something that how would we know what sin was unless we had Torah? So Torah was necessary. Torah is still necessary today because it points us to the standard, God's standard for holiness and being set apart. Now it also it points people to the Messiah, and once you have the Messiah in your heart, you no longer need the Torah as your teacher, but it's still God's standard of holiness, regardless of
Okay.
all the other things that go on.
So I heard about something called the Abrahamic covenant. I think I heard another covenant, the Noah's covenant. I've heard another covenant for Moses' covenant. So I'm just trying to make sure, is this a synonym that we can just use back and forth? Or is there actually, some strict hierarchy between covenant, promises, orders,
There
things like that?
are lots. There are several covenants. I mean, you've got starting out at let's just start out with the Noahic covenant. Okay, here's God has said, okay, I am not going to destroy the world with flooding again, and and these are the things that I want you to do as a result of me saving you from the flood. Fast forward, then you've got the Abrahamic covenant, and that's where God tells Abraham, it's because of your faith, your belief and your faith in me that's counted for righteousness. And as a result of that, God cut a covenant with Abraham unilaterally. They cut the animals in two, and normally you would walk between the two, the carcasses, the halves of the carcasses. But except God put Abraham to sleep, and God went through himself.
Praise God.
Meaning that, okay, this is a unilateral covenant with me and Abraham, and nothing that Abraham can do at this point is going to keep me from blessing him and his progeny, because I've
Praise
already
God.
said I will make you a father of many nations, and that's going to happen no matter what. And so there you got that one. Then you've got later on, you've got the of course the Mosaic covenant at Sinai, and that's where we got the Torah, and that had its own sets of if you will obey my laws, if you will do the things that I'm telling you, then I will bless you. If you do not obey my laws and you don't do what I'm telling you to do, then you will be cursed. And you'll notice if you go through those things, the curses are about 3 times more numerous than the blessings are. But at the same time, God said, that he blesses, he curses to the 4th generation, but he blesses to the 10th generation or the 100th generation.
Praise God.
And so then later on, you had what some people call the Davidic covenant. With where God told David, I said, you will always have one of your progeny on the throne of David. And of course, that was meaning Yeshua. And then Jeremiah, and later on in our study, he's going to be talking about the Jeremiah and the other prophets that talk about a new covenant.
That's right. Thank you, Rabbi.
So there's now
Jeremiah 31, 31.
32, and so that does not mean that each covenant abrogates the one that was before it. It just built on it. It's kind of like contracts in law. You don't have to totally abrogate or stop a covenant or a contract that you had with a contractor when you want to. It says, okay, you built this building and you're my preferred contractor, but while you're still building that, I want you to go ahead and build this over here. You don't cut the contractor off and says, okay, well, halfway through, nah, let's cut that out and let's build this over here, or let's stop this, we'll go
Okay.
build over here. You
And that's
build
what we have
on that covenant.
And is that what we have in Jeremiah 18?
In what regard?
In regard to what you were saying, covenant
Oh yeah,
today.
yeah. And
Okay.
when I'm talking about covenant in these in 18 and 19, yeah, we're talking about the Mosaic covenant at this point specifically, where Israel was supposed to follow what God what he told them to do, and they said they would follow what he told them to do, and then they promptly went out and did the opposite, and they never did very well at following God. And
All
so
right. Thanks.
what they
Thanks,
have in
Rabbi.
mind there is the Mosaic covenant. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thanks, Rabbi. That's what I was questioning. And Jeremiah.
Rabbi Steve, you bring up a very
19.
good point.
Yes, sir.
Rabbi Steve, you bring up a very good point about the fact that there are basically two different types of covenants. Covenant between two people, as in the marriage covenant, that admits it's a covenant before God, that it's between two people where the parties have, each party has an obligation, and you have, in case of as you shared in from Genesis, and where God made a covenant with Abraham, and it's a one-sided covenant, and it's not dependent upon the action of Abraham, but it's a result of Abraham's faith in God. But he makes a one-sided covenant that's unbreakable, so it can't be broken, because in order to break the covenant, one of the parties has to break it. Abraham can't break it, and God certainly won't. So that's the case there. But it's I think we lose sight of the importance of covenant in our modern society. I mean, let's talk about marriage. I mean, very few people consider marriage as being a covenant, but it's a serious thing to break covenant. But beyond that, just the importance of it, and that God places upon it, and how we should be mindful of it. We've talked about we refer to the New Testament as the Brit Hadashah, the New Covenant. It's or should say with renewed covenant. It's like the amended covenant. When you say a New Testament, people don't. It kind of, people just don't get it. They don't think of it in terms of covenant.
I was thinking about it. Thank you, Warren. Thank you, Rabbi.
Yeah, well, and we could go and talk about it. People will say, okay, it's the renewed covenant, but Jeremiah doesn't say it's a renewed covenant. Jeremiah says a new covenant, and a new way of thinking, a new way of, because now we have the Holy Spirit given to us.
Well, I said renewed because I didn't want to give the impression of that it abrogates the previous covenant. I don't want.
That's what Rabbi said.
Right.
It doesn't stop the old ones. It just kind of builds on and enhances. It's just an enhancement of what came before.
Can I say praise God, Rabbi? Praise God.
Yeah,
praise God.
So what it does is
Amen.
that for us, I've seen in mainstream Christianity and so forth, I've seen it where pastors say, well, we are a New Testament church. We don't, the law is done away with, and we are a New Testament church. Well, I'm saying, well, if you don't have the Old Testament, if you don't have the law, then you have no foundation for your New Testament church. So, anyway, we could talk about that for a long time. So, Sun Mi, I saw you were
Yes, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, we haven't been there for, yeah, my husband had a stroke, so we had some issue there. Okay, so I have a question. That means me as a Gentile. So I always heard that so we Gentile, we are grafted with Israel. So even though we didn't have old covenant, what the Jewish people had,
Mhm.
that means I don't have, that means I have only new covenant by Joshua. So in other words, I don't have any um, inheritance.
Okay, so you're asking me, you as a Gentile,
Yeah, what
does
kind
the
of
old
inheritance? Yeah.
does the Old Testament have any hold on you, or do you have any obligation to the Old Testament? Is that a fair?
I'm not obligation, but it's a privilege. So when Paul said we are grafted to
Mhm.
Israel, what does it mean? That means what kind of privilege I have, what kind of responsibility I have. I mean, regardless, we are all, by the Spirit, with a new covenant
Mhm.
by Yeshua. But
Mhm.
yeah,
Well, I mean, the whole idea of the grafted in means that you are getting your life, your sustenance, everything that you need, you're getting from the true vine, which is Yeshua.
yeah,
And so it doesn't matter whether you're a Jew or a Gentile, because Paul says, hey, the Jews can be cut off too, and they would have to be, put back in. And
yeah.
but so that's why I said, even with the Gentiles, you're you are heirs, you're joint heirs with Yeshua. Like in the state of Texas, for an instance, if you adopt a child, legally adopt a child, then you by law cannot disown that child in your will. He must inherit the same as your natural born children. That's in the state of Texas. And I think
Rabbi Steve, I think Ephesians 2 brings some clarity here because it talks, speaking about the Gentile believers, it says, at that time, you were separate from Messiah, excluded from the covenants of promise.
Yeah.
And, excluded from the commonwealth of Israel and strangers to the covenants of promise, having no hope and without God and will. But now in Messiah, Yeshua, you who were once far off have been brought near by the blood of Messiah. So believing Gentiles are now included into this new covenant that Messiah has made, and as a result, they receive blessings. Now, do they receive like the land promises that Israel has to the land of Israel? Well, no. I mean that's still for the Jewish people. I mean but you're included in the Commonwealth of Israel. I mean you receive the same benefits of salvation through Messiah Yeshua.
Have the same benefit. So that means Israel people today, how about they just believe in Yeshua and then receive New Testament, I mean New Covenant? they may not, some like a younger generation, young Jewish generation, they may not know much. They really didn't know much. Maybe they really didn't care. You know, those people, can we talk about them just new covenant by Yeshua? Or we have to tell them, hey, you are Jewish, you have to have your inheritance, and then plus Yeshua, New Testament. So in other
Well,
words,
there's no way for a Gentile to become a Jew. I mean, I can't become Samoan. You know, I can't become Indonesian, or I can't become, or I can't, you know, I'm a white guy. I can't
Right,
become
yeah.
black, you know. It doesn't, I mean, I can't, I'm, you know, so there's that limitation there, but I can still have the same in Messiah. We all have the same, the same benefit of salvation. We all receive our life from the root, you know, the Jewish root of the rich root of the rich root of the olive tree, as Romans 11 says. So I mean, so it's the thing is, it doesn't matter whether you're Jewish or not, or whether, you know, that's it's in terms of all that stuff. It doesn't really matter, and it also does not obligate Gentiles to follow
Right, yeah.
the strictness of the Torah laws that might be incumbent upon Jewish people.
Yeah, what about my
Those of
children?
Israel.
My children, okay, I'm a Gentile. My husband is a Messianic Jew, but my children, that means follow daddies or me. But you know, one time when they go to study abroad, they always ask, you know, if your mom is Jewish. But I know this is not, it's a God, you know, in general, some, when they are doing some privilege, they always ask, mom is a Jew, not a father. So my children, I know it's regardless, so my children considering Jew or it's a Gentile. I mean, it's by the natural concern.
It depends on who you talk to. I mean, in terms of making Aliyah to Israel, unless you have at least one Jewish grandparent, you can't make Aliyah to Israel. I mean, if as far as the state of Israel is concerned, they consider if you've got one Jewish grandparent, you can consider yourself Jewish. However, you know, if you talk to some like the super Orthodox Jews, they don't even consider conservative Jews to be really Jewish. They
Exactly.
You know, and then Reform Jews, they say no way, they don't consider them to be Jewish. You know, so I mean, it depends on who you talk to, because everybody's got a different metric by which they judge Jewishness.
Well, I can tell you the MJAA, the Messianic Jewish Alliance of America, that our Tree of Life congregation falls under. You know, that's our covering. That's what they talk about is the if you have one grandparent that is Jewish, then that makes you Jewish enough to be a full-blown member of the MJAA. And I think for purposes of making Aliyah, you may be able to get by with that, but like you're saying, Warren, the ultra Orthodox would reject that altogether if the mother is not Jewish, because they you know, they've got this weird bit that the mother has to be Jewish, and so, you know, to me, you said your husband is a Messianic Jew. Well, then to me that makes your children Jewish. You know, just and so
Thank you.
it works for me. So
So,
anyway.
Rabbi, if I can get a Jewish mom to adopt me, am I too old?
Well, I think that like I tell everybody, God doesn't make mistakes when he puts us into a family. And if we're born into a Jewish family, that's good. If we're born into a Gentile family, that's good, because he puts us where he wants us to be. And he does not make mistakes. So there you go. I'm gonna cut the live feed off here, because we're going